The battalion was assembled in silence. No banners, no speeches, no photographs. 500 men stood in formation inside an abandoned airfield somewhere east of the mountains. Their uniforms were new. Their rifles had never been fired. Their orders were sealed and marked with a single word: hold. They did not know what they were meant to hold, only that they were not allowed to advance. The officer in command was Colonel Stefan Markovic, a careful man. Not brave in the traditional sense, but precise. He believed discipline was a form of mercy. That chaos was what killed soldiers. His orders arrived without explanation. The battalion would be stationed in Sector Grey. They would not engage unless directly attacked. They would not pursue retreating enemies. They would not abandon their position. No timeline was provided. Sector Grey was not on public maps. It was a shallow valley surrounded by ridges, empty except for ruins from a previous war. No roads passed through it. No strategic resources were listed. It should have been irrelevant. And yet, every major offensive in the region curved around it. Within the first week, the battalion noticed something strange. Artillery fire echoed in the distance but never landed near them. Aircraft flew overhead but never descended. Recon patrols from both sides approached the valley, observed from afar, and withdrew. No one crossed into Sector Grey. The men began to talk. Some joked that they were cursed. Others said they were being used as bait. A few believed they had been forgotten. Markovic listened and said nothing, because he noticed something else. Time behaved differently. Watches desynchronized. Days blurred. The sun rose and set at slightly wrong angles. And every morning, without fail, the ground near the perimeter showed fresh footprints, not from his men, from people who had walked the boundary and turned back. On the 10th day, a wounded enemy soldier stumbled into the valley. He collapsed just meters past the boundary. No one fired. Medics ran forward instinctively. As they lifted him, the soldier grabbed Markovic's sleeve. "Do not push," he whispered. "It pushes back." Then he died. Command contacted Markovic for the first time in 2 weeks. Their message was brief: maintain position. All advances delayed. Delayed by what? They did not say. That night the battalion heard movement on the ridges. Thousands of boots. Not attacking. Waiting. Markovic stood alone in the valley and understood. This battalion was not meant to fight. It was meant to exist. And as long as it did, the war around it could not move forward. Sector Grey did not announce itself. There were no signs, no markers, no obvious reason why maps avoided it. It was simply a valley that felt unfinished, as if the world had paused halfway through deciding what it should become. Colonel Stefan Markovic learned quickly that holding position did not mean inactivity. It meant endurance. The first problem was supply. Convoys arrived on time, but always stopped at the same distance from the perimeter. Drivers refused to cross the invisible line. Engines were shut down. Crates were unloaded by hand and dragged the remaining meters by soldiers who felt a pressure behind their eyes as they crossed back. No one could explain why. Command blamed superstition. Superstition did not account for the way radios crackled when pointed inward, or how compasses slowly rotated until north meant nothing. Markovic ordered detailed logs, distances measured daily, sunrise and sunset times recorded, heart rates during patrols compared. The data made no sense. Time inside Sector Grey was consistent internally, but drifted when compared to the outside world. A watch synchronized at the perimeter would be minutes off by nightfall. By the end of the week, hours. The battalion existed in a pocket that did not fully agree with the war around it. The men felt it in their bodies. Sleep came too easily or not at all. Hunger arrived without warning, then vanished. Old injuries ached. New ones healed strangely fast. Private Luca Henning, a 19-year-old radio operator, woke screaming one night. "I was marching," he said, shaking, "but every step I took made the ground heavier. Like it was asking me why." No one laughed. The ridges surrounding the valley grew crowded. Through binoculars, observers counted units from both sides. infantry, armor, artillery crews, all positioned with clear firing solutions. None of them fired. Orders were shouted. Signals were raised. Nothing crossed the line. It was as if the valley absorbed intent before action could follow. On day 14, a patrol from Markovic's battalion was ordered to test the boundary, not cross it, just approach. 5 men advanced in a straight line. At exactly the same distance as everyone else before them, they stopped, not because they were ordered to, because their legs refused. They reported no pain, no fear, only resistance, like pushing against deep water. One soldier began to cry, confused and ashamed. "I can fight," he said. "I just cannot step." Markovic ordered them back. The resistance vanished instantly. That night, the colonel reviewed old records. Sector Grey had existed under different names in different wars, always ignored, always avoided, always occupied briefly, then left untouched. One note from decades earlier stood out. Unit assigned to holding action. No engagement reported. Enemy advance delayed 37 days without contact. No explanation followed. The battalion's presence began to affect morale elsewhere. Reports came in of stalled offensives. Units delayed for reasons no one could articulate. Plans revised again and again without improving outcomes. High command demanded Markovic's assessment. He replied carefully, "As long as we remain, movement around us slows. I do not believe this is coincidence." The reply came hours later. "Do not theorize. Hold." Pressure built among the men. Soldiers are trained to move toward danger, not to become it. Some demanded reassignment. Others volunteered for boundary tests. A few talked openly about desertion. None attempted it. Those who approached the perimeter with intent to leave felt the same resistance. Absolute. Sector Grey did not imprison them. It simply declined their departure. The first shot fired inside the valley happened by accident. A rifle discharged during cleaning. The sound was wrong. It did not echo. It fell flat, like a sound absorbed by cloth. Outside the valley, observers later reported hearing nothing, not even distant noise. On the 20th day, an enemy officer crossed the line. He walked alone, hands visible, weapon discarded. The resistance did not stop him. That terrified everyone. Markovic approached cautiously. The officer stopped a few steps inside and exhaled deeply, as if relieved. "It is quieter here," he said. "You should leave," Markovic replied. The man shook his head. "I tried. It would not let me." They escorted him to the medical tent. He was unharmed, sane, cooperative. He offered no intelligence, only a statement. "This place is where momentum goes to die." Command ordered interrogation. Before it could occur, the officer disappeared, not escaped, not killed. Gone, his clothes were folded neatly beside his cot. The guards swore they never looked away. After that, Markovic understood. Sector Grey was not neutral ground. It was inertial. It resisted change. Force applied to it did not rebound violently. It dissipated. Wars thrive on momentum. Sector Grey starved it. A general arrived by helicopter on day 28. He landed outside the perimeter and refused to cross. He shouted his authority across the invisible line. "You are delaying operations," he accused. "Your existence is a variable." Markovic answered calmly, "So is gravity." The general ordered an artillery test. One shell, aimed precisely, the gun fired. The shell vanished mid-flight, not exploded, not deflected. Vanished. The gun crew panicked. The general left without another word. That night, the battalion slept deeply for the first time. As if the valley approved, Markovic stood at the center of Sector Grey and felt the truth settle. They were not holding territory. They were holding time. And time, under enough pressure, pushes back. High command does not tolerate stillness. Delay can be excused. Confusion can be managed. But a place that refuses to move becomes an enemy of every plan. Sector Grey had crossed that line. The orders arrived at dawn, carried by a drone that hovered at the perimeter and dropped a sealed container without crossing the boundary. Inside were 3 directives. 1. Increase pressure. 2. Test limits. Prepare for forced resolution. There was no signature, only authority. Colonel Stan Markovic read the orders slowly, then folded the paper and placed it in his pocket. He did not gather the battalion immediately. He walked the valley instead. The grass bent under his boots and returned upright after he passed. The air felt thick, not heavy, but deliberate, as if the valley was aware of observation and responded with patience. Sector Grey was calm. That worried him. The first pressure test began at noon. 2 artillery batteries positioned on opposite ridges were ordered to fire simultaneously into the valley. Not saturation. Precision. Controlled force. The first shells entered Sector Grey and slowed, not visibly at first. Then unmistakably, their trajectories curved inward, as if gravity had become selective. The shells descended gently, losing velocity, and settled into the soil without detonation. Silence followed. Then the ground sighed. A low, deep sound that vibrated through bones rather than air. Outside observers reported nausea and vertigo. Inside the valley, the battalion felt relief, like a muscle unclenching. The guns jammed, both batteries, permanently. Command escalated. If indirect force failed, direct intent would be tested. They sent orders to advance, not to Markovic, to the battalion. Each soldier received a personal message through their field radios. Identical words, identical tone. Advance beyond the perimeter. Engage targets of opportunity. The effect was immediate. Men stood up, shouldered rifles, took one step forward, and stopped. Aware, Private Luca Henning dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "I want to," he said. "I swear I do. But it feels like the ground is asking me something." Markovic knelt beside him. "What?" he asked. Luca swallowed. "Why?" That question spread faster than fear. Why advance? Why attack? Why now? Sector Grey did not block movement. It demanded justification. War rarely has one. Command tried again, this time with threat. A message broadcast openly on all channels. Failure to comply will be considered insubordination. Nothing changed. Discipline remained. Weapons remained clean. No one advanced. The battalion was not disobeying. They were unable. Then came the blood. An enemy armored unit attempted a flanking maneuver around the valley, cutting too close to the boundary. A tank crossed the invisible line at speed, engine roaring, momentum unquestioned. The resistance did not stop it, it accepted it. The tank rolled forward 10 meters inside Sector Grey and simply shut down. Engine dead. Electronics silent. Metal cooling instantly. The crew climbed out, confused, and collapsed. Not wounded, not dead. Unconscious, as if sleep had overtaken them mid-step. Medics rushed in. The moment the crew was dragged back across the boundary, they woke up screaming. They remembered everything. Every thought, every intention, every order they had followed without question. 3 of them never returned to duty. That incident broke the illusion. Sector Grey was not passive. It was evaluative. High Command convened an emergency council. The conclusion was unanimous. The battalion could no longer be allowed to exist as a static variable. If Sector Grey was anchored by presence, then presence must be removed. A new order was issued. Colonel Markovic was to withdraw the battalion. Immediately, completely, by force if necessary. The war needed to move again. Markovic gathered his officers at sunset. He did not read the order aloud. He summarized. "They want us gone," he said, "not replaced, removed." One captain asked the question no one else voiced. "And if the valley doesn't allow it?" Markovic met his eyes. "Then we decide whether we are soldiers or ballast." The withdrawal began at first light. Units packed efficiently. Camps dismantled. Equipment loaded. The battalion approached the perimeter together. The resistance returned. Stronger than before. Men leaned forward and could not move. Vehicles stalled. Radios screamed with static. The valley tightened its hold. Then something unprecedented happened. A shot was fired from outside, not into the valley. At the valley, a sniper round struck the ground just inside the boundary. The soil absorbed it and responded. Every man inside Sector Grey felt it, a wave of pressure, not violent, but absolute. Like the moment before impact, stretched infinitely, several soldiers fell to their knees. One vomited. Markovic remained standing. Barely. The valley was no longer indifferent. It was offended. A voice spoke. Not through radios, not through air. Inside, not loud, not threatening. Final. This presence was accepted. This pressure is not. Outside the boundary, every instrument failed at once. Vehicles stalled. Weapons jammed. Command channels went silent. The war stopped around the valley. Not metaphorically. Operationally, Markovic understood the truth then. Sector Grey did not exist to stop war forever. It existed to delay it until intention mattered. And now intention had become coercion. That changed the terms. He issued a single order. Stand down. Sit. Place weapons on the ground. The battalion obeyed instantly. The pressure eased. The valley exhaled. Markovic forward alone. He crossed the boundary. This time, there was no resistance. Behind him, Sector Grey held the battalion in place. Ahead of him, the war waited. He raised his hands and spoke into a dead radio. "You want movement," he said calmly. "Then you'll have to move me." No response came. But somewhere beyond sight, plans began to fail again. Colonel Stefan Markovic did not return to the valley, not immediately. When he crossed the boundary, the resistance vanished behind him like a door, closing softly. Sector Grey sealed itself with the battalion inside, calm and immovable. Ahead of him lay the war, loud, impatient, hungry for motion. Command vehicles waited at a distance, engines running, antennas raised uselessly toward a sky that refused to cooperate. Markovic walked alone until armed guards stopped him. They did not point their weapons. They did not need to. The council met inside a temporary command bunker hastily assembled beyond the ridgeline. Maps covered the walls. Sector Grey was marked with thick gray shape, deliberately vague, its edges smudged as if no one trusted them. Generals spoke first, then men who believed wars were won by removing obstacles. Markovic listened. When it was his turn, he spoke only one sentence. "If you break the valley, you release everything it has been holding back." Silence followed. Then someone asked the question everyone had been avoiding. How many men are acceptable? The answer came quickly. All of them. The plan was called forced resolution. Not an assault, not an evacuation, a cancellation. If Sector Grey was anchored by presence, that presence would be neutralized in place. Precision bombardment. Layered strikes. Enough force to disrupt whatever field, effect, or anomaly existed. The battalion would not be extracted. They would be overwritten. Markovic refused to authorize the order. Command removed him from operational authority within minutes. He was escorted outside and told to wait. He did not resist. He sat on a crate and watched clouds drift the wrong way. Inside the valley, the battalion felt the change before anything moved. The air thickened again, but differently than before. Not evaluative, protective. Men stopped speaking without being told. Weapons were placed gently on the ground. Some soldiers sat. Others lay back and stared at the sky. No panic, only clarity. Private Luca Henning looked at the perimeter and smiled faintly. "It's like holding your breath," he said. "But the ground is breathing for us." The first missile entered Sector Grey at 14:03. It crossed the boundary cleanly. No slowing, no curve. For the first time, the valley allowed violence to enter. The missile did not explode. It unraveled. Mid-air, its casing separated, its guidance system went dark, and its fuel dispersed harmlessly like mist before touching the ground. The second missile followed. And the third. All failed. Command escalated. A full strike package was launched. Artillery, rockets, aerial bombardment. The sky darkened with intent. Sector Grey waited. The bombardment began. Explosions did occur this time, but not where they were aimed. Shockwaves folded inward, collapsing on themselves. Fire burned briefly, then extinguished as if denied oxygen. Craters formed and healed within minutes, soil settling back into place. The battalion remained untouched. Observers outside the valley experienced something else entirely: memory loss, disorientation, a crushing sense of futility. Several officers broke down. One removed his insignia and walked away. Inside the valley, a voice returned, clearer than before. Not inside minds, in the air. "You are attempting erasure," it said. "This presence is stabilizing." The battalion understood without instruction. They were no longer soldiers. They were mass, holding something down. Command made the final decision. If force could not break Sector Grey, absence might. They would withdraw everything around it, leave it isolated, cut supply, cut observation, cut acknowledgement, starve the anomaly of relevance. The war moved. Front lines shifted. Battles resumed. Maps were redrawn with a blank space where Sector Grey sat unmentioned. No orders referenced it. No reports requested updates. Officially, it ceased to exist. Inside the valley, days passed differently now. The men did not age normally. Beards grew slowly. Wounds did not worsen. Hunger came rarely. They lived in a prolonged present. Some believed they would remain forever. Others believed forever was not required. Markovic was released months later. No apology. No explanation. He returned to civilian life, carrying something heavier than guilt. Knowledge. He wrote letters he never sent. He avoided maps. He stopped wearing watches. Years later, after the war ended, a geological survey attempted to chart the region. They reported something strange. The valley existed, but measurements disagreed. Area inconsistent, depth variable, coordinates unstable. It was listed as non-navigable terrain. And in veteran circles, a rumor circulated quietly that somewhere a battalion still stood, not fighting, not advancing, holding the war in place. Wars end loudly, declarations, signatures, parades that try to convince survivors that has been restored. But Sector Grey did not hear the announcement. When the armistice was signed, radios crackled across continents. Units stood down. Fronts dissolved to borders. Soldiers laid down weapons and waited to be told who they were allowed to be again. Inside Sector Grey, nothing changed. No signal reached them. No messenger crossed the boundary. No calendar corrected itself. The battalion remained, still, breathing, holding. Time inside the valley had slowed further. Not stopped. Not frozen, stretched. Days passed like hours. Weeks folded into single memories. Men stopped marking time because it no longer behaved predictably. Private Luca Henning noticed first. His beard had grown perhaps a centimeter in what felt like months. His boots showed no wear. A scar on his hand faded instead of thickening. "We're not aging right," he said quietly. No one argued. Food supplies dwindled slowly but never vanished. Crates left untouched for weeks still contained fresh rations. Water sources replenished themselves after use. Sector Grey was not sustaining them out of kindness. It was maintaining balance. Outside the valley, the world struggled to remember. In post-war records, the battalion was listed as lost in an administrative error. Some documents said destroyed, others said reassigned. A few omitted it entirely. Colonel Stefan Markovic's name appeared once, attached to a note. Officer reassigned, unit status unresolved. Unresolved things make institutions uncomfortable. They stop looking. Years passed. A road was built nearby, curving gently away from the valley without explanation. Engineers could not justify the deviation. The ground tests always failed near the boundary. They built around it, as people always do. The first civilian entered Sector Grey by accident. A shepherd, following a stray animal, crossed the boundary on a foggy morning decades after the war. Inside, he found men in old uniforms standing calmly among ruins that did not decay. They did not aim weapons. They did not speak. They simply watched. The shepherd fled. He told no one. Within the valley, something shifted. Not pressure, not resistance. Permission. The battalion felt it collectively, like a loosening grip. Some men began to dream again. Real dreams, not loops, not echoes. Others felt fear for the first time in years. "What happens when we're no longer needed?" someone asked. No one answered. The voice returned. Once, soft, unavoidable. "You have delayed enough." The battalion understood. They had not been placed there to stop war forever. Only long enough. Markovic felt it too. He was old now. Slower. But when the news came, it arrived without sound. He woke knowing it was time. He traveled back to the valley for the first time since he left it. The boundary did not resist him. It welcomed him. Inside, the men looked unchanged. Calm, waiting, they stood when they saw him. No salutes, no words. They did not need them. "The war is over," Markovic said. The words landed gently. Some men smiled, some closed their eyes. Luca Henning stepped forward. "And us," Markovic hesitated. "Your work is done." The valley released its hold. One by one, the soldiers felt gravity return. Time resumed its weight. Hunger sharpened. Muscles ached. Age caught up in a rush of sensation. Some collapsed, some laughed, some cried without understanding why. The valley began to change. Grass withered. Ruins crumbled. The air lost its density. Sector Grey was becoming ordinary. The battalion did not leave together. They could not. Years returned to them unevenly. Some men aged decades in days. Others slowed, surviving just long enough to step outside. Not all made it. Those who remained behind did not suffer. They simply stayed, holding nothing now. By the time the valley fully released its effect, fewer than half the battalion crossed the boundary. They emerged into a world that had moved on without them. No records. No recognition. No place prepared. Sector Grey collapsed into geography. Just a valley. Just land. Just silence. But something had been lost with it. Not power. Not mystery. Delay. From that point forward, wars moved faster. Too fast. Markovic visited the site once more before he died. There was no boundary now. He stepped freely where resistance once stood. Nothing happened. And that frightened him more than anything had before. After Sector Grey became ordinary land, the world accelerated. Not immediately. Not dramatically. At first it was only a feeling. Wars began and ended faster. Decisions skipped hesitation. Operations moved from planning to execution with frightening efficiency. There were fewer pauses, fewer delays where doubt could grow, fewer moments where someone asked why. Historians would later struggle to define when it changed. They blamed technology. They blamed politics. They blamed impatience. None of them mentioned a valley that once refused to move. The men who survived Sector Grey did not speak publicly. Some could not adapt. They had lived too long inside stillness. The world outside felt reckless, loud, irresponsible. A few became activists. A few disappeared. Most lived quietly, aging faster than they should have, as if time were reclaiming what it had been denied. They all shared the same dream, standing still while everything else rushed past. Colonel Stefan Markovic died without ceremony. Among his papers was a single journal entry written near the end of his life. "We mistake speed for progress." There was a place that knew better. The journal was archived, unread. Decades later, during a major multinational conflict, something strange happened. A mechanized division preparing to cross a disputed border stopped. No mechanical failure. No enemy contact. The lead vehicles simply would not advance. Command demanded explanations. The crews had none. They reported a sensation of pressure. Gentle, firm, as if the ground itself were asking for justification. Engineers tested the area. Nothing abnormal. Geologists shrugged. The division waited. Hours passed. Diplomats intervened. Talks began. The border was not crossed. Satellite data later showed something subtle. For a brief window, the region's temporal readings had drifted. Milliseconds, insignificant by themselves, but enough. Old veterans noticed. They said nothing publicly, but one of them, long retired, wrote a letter to a former comrade. "It's not gone," he wrote. "It's just smaller." Sector Grey had not been destroyed. It had taught. That lesson did not belong to one valley. It belonged to the idea that momentum should sometimes be questioned, that presence can matter more than force, that standing still can be an act of resistance. There would never be another battalion like that one. No orders would ever again say simply "H hold" without explanation. But occasionally, when wars move too quickly, something intervenes, not loudly, not violently, a pause, a delay, a refusal that has no face. Maps do not mark it. Command structures do not plan for it. But those who feel it know, they hesitate. And in that hesitation, lives remain unlived rather than lost. The battalion that never fired did not win the war. It did something harder. It reminded the world that not every advance is necessary. That sometimes the most powerful action is to remain where you are.